Council meeting of Wyndham City Council this Tuesday, the 23rd of July 2019. In the spirit of reconciliation, before we begin this meeting, I acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Please stand for the opening prayer and welcome. We pray for guidance in the Council's decision-making to achieve the best outcome for the people of Wyndham. Please be seated. I would like to welcome members of the gallery, press, councillors and staff here tonight for the special council meeting. Some of you may have seen notices in the foyer, but for those who didn't, I would like to make you aware of the following. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will be archived and made available on Council's website. While all care has been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained, please be aware that your presence may be recorded. Item 2, apologies. Madam CEO, do we have any apologies for this evening, Madam CEO?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ahn. I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 3, declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict of interest, conflicting personal interest in any item of the agenda. Councillors, does anyone have any conflicts of interest they wish to declare this evening? Thank you, councillors. Item 4, officers' reports. Item 4.1, response to the petition 19/05, installation of a barbecue and lighting at a park in Breton Drive, Hoppers Crossing. The report is on pages 3 to 7. The recommendation is on page 4. The attachment is on page 8. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McAloney. Thank you. Councillor Barlow, would you like to speak to this item?
It's self-explanatory. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Are there any other speakers on this item? Thank you, councillors. I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 4.2, review of gifts, benefits and hospitality policy 2014. The report is on pages 9 to 11. The recommendation is on page 11 and the attachment is on pages 12 to 22. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor McAloney. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor McAloney, would you like to speak? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Gifts, benefits and hospitality policy, as stated, is not part of the Local Government Act, and however it is an important policy that councillors and council officers must commit to. Of all the tiers of government, Madam Mayor, we are perhaps the most governed in relation to disclosure, and it's important from a public accountability and public perception basis that we adhere to this policy. The updated policy has come before the Audit and Risk Committee in June and will now be on the agenda on a 6-monthly basis and will, as stated, will go before the Risk and Audit Committee and the Executive Leadership Team. All councillors and officers are responsible to declare their gifts, even when they're not accepted, and must state their value. And I think that's really important. Sometimes we forget we may be offered a gift and we don't accept it. We've got to complete the necessary forms. IBAC guidelines. IBAC guidelines in March have provided reports outlining the local government integrity framework, and the review provides greater clarity when developing a policy for declaring gifts, benefits and hospitality. A register which is available for public scrutiny and inspection will be on our website in the future, and it's in line with the Victorian Ombudsman's Gifts Policy Register. This level of scrutiny already happens in a number of public sector boards, and I will be supporting this motion tonight, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
I think this is a great policy. It talks about that if we have a policy which is $50, if we received, we must declare it, and as Councillor Kim McLennan have said, it is very important that we have the integrity to make sure every year, twice in a year, when we're submitting our ordinary returns, we make sure that we submitted a gift if you have received and must declare it. Now, I find a bit struggling to understand that it talks about this governance unit will maintain a register. Now, for a common man, for a person, they don't know which governance unit, and it's difficult to go and ask where it should be kept. So I highly encourage now the council to take a view, maintain as live. So when people receive, they can submit that to the governance department, and it can go on website so everybody can see that who have received a $50 or more than that or whatever it is. It didn't talk about it, who should be responding it if they want to have email, how. And now, since we're reviewing it, I would say that, that we should consider that it should go live on website, council's website, and anybody can go and check it, because it's difficult to come to the council and ask which department and how to find out who's having and what. Also, though, it didn't talk about it either if the people's going to access the register, whether they have to pay money for it or it's absolutely free. So it has to be clarified for the people, those reading this policy, whether it's free to anybody or they've got to pay money for it, because sometimes local government do charge whatever the small admission fees is. So I would say that, and I think we know that, a lot of people have got in trouble because of just having a bottle of wine. And we know that what happened in New South Wales, one of the premier have to resign. And if that thing can prevent it widely, and I think we should put on a website. So this is my sort of say, what I'd like to say that. And yeah, it's a good policy. I would be supporting it, but I'd like to see that, it can get out of trouble, a lot of people, if it's go online and we can update it here as we go along.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillors, do I have any speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put this item to a vote. All those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 4.3, protected disclosure, fraud and corruption control and risk and management policies. The report is on pages 23 to 25. The recommendation is on page 23 and the attachments are on pages 26 to 42. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillor McElhinney, would you like to speak to this item? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a councillor with a long-standing commitment to good governance practices and as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee, I'm pleased to speak on this item. This report recommends the adoption of the updated risk management, protected disclosure and fraud and corruption policies. Together, these policies demonstrate Council's commitment as a public entity to an integrity framework which meets legislative requirements and demonstrates a best practice approach to ensuring that Council is operating in a transparent and accountable manner. I note also these policies are being considered tonight when we've also just considered the updated gifts, benefits and hospitality policy. These policies form part of the Council's integrity framework and demonstrates Council's commitment to a culture of good governance practices. I consider that managing risks is an integral part of good management practice and decision making. Risk management is a critical part of our operations. While risks cannot be eliminated, if the exposure is unacceptably high, then the risk may be avoided or managed. The risk management policy, which we are considering this evening, specifies 4 objectives. These objectives include what I believe is a vital element, being the Council will foster a constructive risk management culture to improve decision making and will encourage communication to avoid surprises and support the effective escalation of risks. The second policy, which we are considering, is the protected disclosure policy. Our Council is and has been committed to the aims and objectives of the Protective Disclosure Act since 2012. The updated Protected Disclosure Policy provides for governance structures necessary to support making and handling disclosure of improper conduct and or detrimental action. This policy states that disclosures have a variety of reporting avenues available to them. These include reporting anonymously via the whistleblower hotline or to IBAC directly. The third and final policy we are considering this evening is that Council is committed to the prevention, mitigation and deterrence of all forms of fraud and corrupt conduct. The fraud and corruption policy states that Council has zero tolerance for fraudulent or corrupt behaviour. The policy requires our people to act with integrity in the performance of their roles and promptly report conduct which is improper or unethical. These policies, and it's important to note, these policies apply to councillors, advisory committees, staff and volunteers. And I'm pleased to support the adoption of these important policies, and I encourage my fellow councillors to adopt them also. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this item to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 4.4, planning permit application WYP 11390/19, use and development of a telecommunications facility at land known as number 1, Saltwater Promenade, Point Cook. The report is on pages 43 to 54. The recommendation is on pages 44 to 46, and the pages are on 55, the attachment, and are on pages 55 to 58. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Khan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McElhinney. Councillor Khan, would you like to speak to this motion? Thank you, Councillor Khan. Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Hooper.
Look, I just wanted to briefly touch on the report. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I wanted to point out to the community it was seriously looked at. We spoke with the officers about the methodology and the research that was done. I'm absolutely convinced that this is a safe and equitable outcome for the community that will be surely needed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Are there any other speakers? Councillor McElhinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to make the point it is in accordance with the facilities telecom policy. It's also, while I wasn't present on the 3rd of June, I have read the submissions that came in through the town planning meeting, and it meets all the policies and provisions of the Wyndham Planning Scheme, estate and local planning, and also our recently adopted, when we first came onto council, our telecommunications facility policy, which we put together because of situations like this. And one of the objectives of the policy, or several of the objectives of this policy, was to ensure surrounding land is not adversely affected by the installation of telecommunication facilities. It provides applicants with council's requirement relating to design, siting, construction and operation, and everything in this report complies with that. Minimal visual impact of infrastructure associated with the provision of the telecommunications services. And again, there's minimal impact, a visual impact in regards to this report, and ensuring the siting of the telecommunications facilities is in an appropriate location. And I honestly think it is in an appropriate location, and we need more telecommunication facilities. There is definite black spots down in the saltwater coast area, so this will improve internet connection down there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any further speakers for this item? Councillors, I now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 4.5, planning permit application WYP 11040/18, use and development of the land as a childcare centre and alteration of access to a road zone, category 1 at land known as number 28, Riverbend Crescent, Werribee. The report is on pages 59 to 82. The recommendation is on pages 60 to 61. The attachment are on pages 83 to 90. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Gibbons. Councillor Hooper, would you like to speak to this item?
Just to quickly note, again, this is one of those times where I think the report is pretty self-explanatory. It goes into the fact that the proposal didn't actually talk about noise impacts or how it would adequately address them. So this is really responding to community needs, and it's applaud the staff for, again, putting together a very thorough document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any other speakers on this item? Councillor Marcus?
Yes, as Councillor Hooper mentioned, I think the officers have certainly looked into this planning permit, and I think this is the right recommendation, that a notice of refusal to grant the planning permit. When you read through all of this, there would have been many difficulties over there for the people that live in the residential area because it does not fit into the neighbourhood character. Traffic would have been horrendous, as it's fairly bad now. Shores Road is a very busy road which would cause much more traffic congestion with a large childcare centre. Parking was not designed adequately, and safety and for the children and parents was not taken into consideration. And the building itself was only a couple of metres away from somebody's bedroom window. So I thank the planning officers for looking into this and thoroughly investigating the reasons why they would refuse the permit.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other further speakers on this item? Councillor Khan?
I think this is one of those applications you have to look a bit thoroughly now. The council officers made a decision based on few, the number and the clauses to refuse to this application, and it's been a child care. So I'm not sure whether that will stack up a point in a VCAT one that will say the residential is actually need for the child care. So now that we'll see that how this application will go, but I wish to see that, that if that child care operators can be a bit more guided in the area to facilitate 104 child care centre, and it's actually operating with a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There's a growing area. So I did understand that the officers have done a great job, but I think rather than refusing it, maybe we can have the conditions and guide them rather than allowing 104 childcare spaces. We might be, because it's actually refusing the access to the category zone 1, so it's actually access has been problematic for this childcare centre, not actually the use of the childcare centre in the area. So it depends on a number of planning factors, but I would be disappointed to support this. I will be not supporting the decision of the officers, because I think this is what the community needs it, and we are not meeting the demand of the community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor McAloony?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say this application, I've thoroughly looked at it, and while we need childcare facilities in the area, it does tick all the boxes. The officers have done their due diligence on this, and they wouldn't have refused to grant a permit if they didn't think it was warranted. So, as I said, it ticks all the boxes, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, do I have any other further speakers on this item? Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, it's never easy to say no to a childcare centre, but just a couple of things, and specifically what Councillor Khan mentioned. He said it's in a growth area, but to be honest, I don't think there's a spare block of land for 3 or 4 kilometres or 5 kilometres of this area. There's no actual growth in that area. There's no spare land until you get further north into Wyndham Vale, far west, or you go into Tarneet, which is quite a number of kilometres away. It's a built-out area. And council recently, if I must remind councillors, only around the corner are several, probably 400 or 500 metres away. If my memory serves correct, we approved a childcare centre on the corner of, I think, Parklands Grove and Shores Road, near where the Galvin Park is. So to have another childcare centre so close in an area that is what a lot of people would say is part of the older part of Werribee, really, not that it's up to us to make business decisions. It's not up to us as a council to say, yes, you can make money by building a childcare centre there, or no, you can't. But really, when you look at the area, there are, even next to President's Park, which is very close to this site, there's a childcare centre on that intersection at the roundabout of McGrath's Road and Bolton Road. There's quite a number of childcare centres around the area, and as I said, although we're not, it's not up to us to say whether a business will work or it won't work there, but I don't think that there's a shortage of childcare centres in that area, and I look forward to seeing what happens when the one in Parklands Grove and Shores Road is built, to see what the take-up is in that area. That'll show us whether there's a requirement for it.
Thank you, councillor. Councillors, do we have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this item to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 4.6, Small Business Hub Feasibility Study. The report is on pages 91 to 97. The recommendation is on pages 92, and the attachments are printed in a separate document on pages 3 to 81. Councillors, before I move this item, I do know that there are a few speakers that are very interested in this topic, and if you would like some extra minutes to have your say on this, considering we're making good time, I will allow that, obviously an extra few minutes only, and that will include the mover of the motion. So councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Walter Villagonzalo. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Councillor Villagonzalo, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the responsible approach Council has adopted in undertaking the feasibility study. The report has taken into account the current small business and startup landscape in Wyndham, the emergence of the knowledge economy, and the need for Wyndham to continue to transition to a destination for new economy jobs and investments. Importantly, we have an evidence-based report that offers a compelling case for the establishment of an innovation hub and a compelling case to undertake a proactive approach in attracting co-working spaces to our city. I am confident that the community will welcome the robust preliminary work that we have undertaken prior to investing in an initiative that will enable startups and sustain and grow jobs and businesses in Wyndham and grow the local small and medium business ecosystem. Around 15 years ago, Madam Mayor, the situation was very different. I have been a local resident for 30 years, and I have operated small businesses and belonged to local business organizations. Wyndham was not as friendly and supportive as it is today to startups and small businesses. The combined scope of co-working and innovation hubs were done by business incubators. There was federal funding available for community-based business incubators then, and with the support of the Area Consultative Committee, I approached Council so we could establish a business incubator in Werribee. At the time, the only incubators in Victoria were in Brunswick and Darebin. Council refused to support the idea, which I persistently requested for many years. Actually, it was the lack of support for our local small businesses that made me decide to stand for Council 5 times. Times have changed, and Council today would be a leader in the way it supports startups and small businesses. This Small Business Hub Feasibility Report is one big step towards supporting small businesses. I endorse this report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villagonzalo. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Ahn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the completion of this robust report. And I have to say, I'm very excited to see the opportunities identified for Council to pursue. The delivery of these initiatives will play a major role in developing entrepreneurship and fostering the acceleration of startup enterprises in Wyndham. Most importantly, our local businesses grow, so does the capacity of the city to create new employment opportunities for our residents, workers. I congratulate Councillor Walter Villagonzalo for his leadership in this field. As he said, he just mentioned, he has been working on this for many, many years. And I also share similar passion with him. And I also want to congratulate Peter McKinnon and also the economic development team and everyone involved in this work. I commit the recommendation of this report in terms of building a strong and sustainable economy and its alignment with the city plan, economic growth strategy, and the smart city strategy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm just going to talk briefly about a couple of points in this. Wyndham City, in the background of the report, says Wyndham City is acknowledged as one of Victoria's fastest growing communities, with the population alone expected to increase around 400,000 people by 2040, or the size of Canberra, as we often talk around. It's absolutely vital that we look at a range of options for employment to grow in our city. Apprenticeships, traineeships, retail, office space, office workers, green collar workers. We need a range of employment options because we've got a community with a range of backgrounds. We come from all walks of life and from all parts of the globe. 160 different cultures and 160 different types of life experiences, not to mention education and all the other parts that go along with that. So we need a range of commercial space, a varied range of office space for these places, for the people in this community to be able to create, innovate, and have their businesses grow. Now, often people don't realise that it takes a lot of risk when you set up a business. There's a lot of capital outlay, and sometimes you need to take steps. With this hub, we're providing a key step for businesses to go from home office to full retail or office space, and it's absolutely an awesome part to be a part of. So thank you very much, everyone that's put this together, and I look forward to seeing how it unfolds and what sort of innovation the people of Wyndham, one of the smartest cities I've ever lived in, can come up with. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Thank you, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. Small business hub feasibility study, and I guess someone that's lived in this city for 50 years has been in business in many different types of businesses. I certainly am very pleased to see this report by Peter, and I know Darryl Wilson has had a lot to do with it. So I think it is in very good hands. But I do have some concerns. But first of all, when John Codman was the manager of Pacific Werribee, he was fabulous, and he was working with me to get a fashion business incubator. We had it all set up where the young people would come in, and they were going to give the shop free, and that the young people could come in and bring their ranges in and sell it and get used to being what it was like to have a business. But sadly, John is now over at the Jam Factory, and that went by the way. But I certainly think that council should perhaps speak with the manager of the Werribee Plaza to see if they would be kind enough, because there is empty shops out there, if they could perhaps set something up there. But I'm also very concerned because in the Age, and the heading on page 9 was jobs slow as business softens. And I think we all should be looking at what's going to happen coming with retail. And this is what it said: a slowdown in job creation and advertisements, plus more signs business conditions are deteriorating, is increasing pressure on the Reserve Bank of Australia and the Morrison government to move quickly to safeguard the economy. As I said before, I have 2 businesses in this city at the moment, and we see it daily. People are coming in to see if we can give them employment. Because of the slowdown, businesses need people with skills, and this is where this will fit in very well. We can't take people with no skills because profit margins are so low. We can't afford the overheads. And this is where it's very sad. Like people keep saying, we want jobs, we want jobs. They're not supporting our small businesses. They're supporting Amazon and Costco, who are not based here in Australia. And this is the problem we're seeing today. I believe this study in the agenda concludes that council will deliver an innovation hub, and it is deemed to be the most realistic option at this stage. I want to see where the kids are getting experience, not on developing a startup ecosystem. I want the students and any older people that want to go in there to learn how to set up a business, that is the experience that they're going to get. So I do hope that council will have a staged approach, and which will assist our people, young and old, to set up. And I'm just seeing more empty shops in every strip centre around Melbourne, because as a business person, we go out looking about it. So I think we need more than what we have written in this. I think it's going to be a really test over time. And most of the business people I know say the train wreck is coming. And I think it's something that we really have to take heed of and just look at it. So, but I have every confidence in Peter and Daryl that they will work diligently to make sure that we can offer some kind of employment and assist those already in business that are struggling now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
Mayor, look, I think this is one of the closest topics close to my heart. And when I was a business portfolio holder in last council, I've always said that, you know, we need a business grant for the small businesses. How we actually prove ourselves, we are actually want to promote small businesses. Having good policies, one way of saying that, you know, council is welcoming and want to have small businesses. Council have come so far now, and now we actually come up with a steady and feasibility now. I think it's a good way to see that we're thinking we can have a business hub. The study was conducted by Mark Hudson and Associates. They were suggesting here that Wyndham City would have two types of businesses. One is a co-working, which is a privately operated, or another one is Wyndham City Council sponsored innovation hub. I think Wyndham in a position close to being a Melbourne CBD, we can actually become a startup of entire Victoria, because we are very, very close to CBD. So if people want to come and invent something or do innovation here, this is a great place. Since we already know that now a few things happen in our area, AEC is no longer there, I think we're in better positions to offer that kind of facilities, whether it's sponsored by council or by private kind of partnership. But definitely, there was in 2016 by Tim Pallas, the press release come on a website says a $60 million with startup initiative are now open for businesses. So definitely the Labor government is thinking this area definitely need a startup businesses. I have to say that now the Point Cook has been Australia as one of the fastest and online community. So that simply shows that how we are moving to digital economy, the social economy. And if something like that can happen, a co-working space or innovation, that will definitely help the new businesses who now wants to actually run a businesses through the sharing or innovation. Now, I do agree with the Heathers now, the retail is struggling in a city, and it will struggle in future, because the way that the society is changing, it becoming a digital society, become economic, knowledge-based economy. So I think we should be preparing it ourselves to see how we can actually work with the knowledge-based economy. Now, I wish the council can bring a grant for small businesses, as the Melbourne City Council does at the moment. And when I stood for election in this year, I did say that I will be advocating for the small businesses grant. Maybe we start with the 10 or 20, but it just encourages, just show us we just are a really, really good council. We can afford it. And I think we can set up a sample saying that, you know, we are actually welcoming businesses, and business are welcome in the city. I'll be look forward to working. It's a great job done by Peter and other officers working on that one. I will love to see that, you know, when we sort and soon we have a startup. There are many countries, I like to say, Madam Mayor, who just offering a startup space, but do offer other incentives. I think we've got to learn from China and other countries where you have 5-year no rent. I'm not saying we should do 5-year no rent, but there is a model. If you come to my city and you employ XYZ number of people, we'll give you a no rent. Of course, the facility owned by a government, and then you're creating jobs, you're creating opportunities, you're creating economy, and it will help. I think Wyndham could be a leader, thinking outside the box and set of example. We will give a rent period.
You start winding up, councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Give a free space for a couple of months, couple of years, and maybe we can offer other incentives like a regular government conferences, a regular mentoring, some other programs. So I think it's a good way to see that how you will take that far in near future. I'll be working closely and see if I can do something. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor Khan. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this item to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 4.7, Wyndham Landscape Development Levels of Service. The report is on pages 98 to 102. The recommendation is on page 98 and the attachment is printed in the separate document on pages 82 to 291. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Councillor Hooper, would you like to speak to this item?
Most certainly do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Wyndham Landscape Development's Levels of Service is a key document that ensures our open spaces are sustainably developed by council and developers. This work links with two existing documents that strategically guide the development and management of open space in Wyndham. The first of these is the Wyndham Open Space Strategy, which prescribes provision of land for open space purposes, guiding what parks go where and for what intent. The second is the Wyndham Open Space Operational Service Level Agreement, which identifies how parks and open spaces are maintained in accordance with the park's hierarchy and presentation requirements. The Wyndham Landscape Development Levels of Service identifies what elements are acceptable to be built on open space to ensure it's fit for purpose, meets the intent of the park's hierarchy, and that it is affordable for the community in the long term. A key outcome of the development level of service is the consistency in how council and developers embellish open space. This is significant as there are noticeable differences between the older and newer areas of Wyndham. Council needs to ensure the equity of provision across the whole community and that it is therefore achieved in an affordable manner. Importantly, the Wyndham Landscape Levels of Service do not prescribe design outcomes. Creativity, innovation and placemaking will continue to be a vital component of the design process and something I fully support and love. This framework does not prescribe design outcomes. Instead, it determines the type of embellishment along with suitable materials based on the open space hierarchy. Council does not seek nor want a cookie cutter, and I think that would be absolutely terrible. We want to ensure our communities have character and a sense of being, and this approach will allow that in our open space. Design support achievement of that objective, community consultation remains an important part of the process to renew or upgrade our open spaces. This service document will provide the framing for community consultation and sustainability guide design and construction budgets. As a result, council can confidently and sustainably provide fit for purpose and affordable parks and open space to meet community needs and hopefully create innovation and imagination in our kids and the world of tomorrow. I commend this to my fellow councillors and I thank the staff for putting together such an awesome piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I look forward to this because I can remember on previous councils we had a number of issues where developers throw in an awful lot of money into open space, the types of playground equipment that they put in, etc. And then once the blocks have been filled, they move on and it's left up to council then to maintain a number of these sites at a much greater standard than we do in a lot of other areas within the city of Wyndham. And I can remember sitting in this place with people living in a number of estates where they're complaining that the standard that they bought into isn't maintained, and that's very difficult when you're asking people to actually, in certain areas you have certain standards because that's the way it was 10, 15 years ago, and now in a new area where a lot of money, a lot of marketing money has gone into setting up these developments, that the council has to pay much more out of ratepayer funds to actually keep those standards up. So I think it's very clear, and it's good that we've actually got a policy, a very clear policy, that there are going to be certain standards for certain parks depending on the level. And so there's no wrong or right answer to any of this, but it is a difficult situation when you do move into an area and there's spring flowers are planted during the spring, then they die off, and then winter flowers are put into flower by the developer, and council just doesn't have the resources to go around.
One more minute, Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To be doing things like that. So you do need to have certain standards that go across the municipality, and I don't want to throw any cold water on the developments that new developers are putting in, but we need to have a common sense approach in just how much money we can spend, and that these parks will be kept up to a reasonable standard.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Gilligan.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. Look, I certainly echo the points of Councillor Barlow, and I think they're quite good ones. I just want to add to that too the opposite problem in relation to developer bonds. That is, the developers that ultimately must pay us back where they've not delivered to a standard that we expect of them in these parks. And so it is important that council officers continue to not only deliver on that level of standard, but also consider the extent to which the developer bond that is paid ultimately meets the costs that ratepayers are ultimately hit with in the event that the developer doesn't deliver to the standard that Councillor Barlow has quite rightly outlined. There's a couple of things about this policy more broadly that I think are worth discussing. Very briefly, we're looking at establishing a public toilet strategy. I think that's quite a massive issue in our community. So we're getting on that. And I think that's, as part of the level of service that we're delivering, that's really important for the community. I think more broadly, this document, as Councillor Barlow has outlined as well, really does set the standard for what the public can reasonably expect in each of these parks. It is then a question of priority and demand around how that's determined at a budget level, and I'm sure we'll all be interested in our respective wards in getting the best outcome for our community overall. The other thing that I think is worth discussing, and it's something that I think we all as a LGA, as a council, need to improve on. It's the placemaking aspect of our city. I think we've got that in the CBD. I don't think we've got that at all in Tarneit or in Point Cook and other parts of the city, and the improvements that need to be made around that in the context of the way we landscape out not only our parks, but more broadly the way in which we design the aesthetics of the city, I think does need to be considered. I think we've made some great inroads.
Got one more minute, Councillor Gilligan.
As opposed to 20, 30 years ago, but there's some improvements that I think council officers do need to consider in terms of investment, particularly in that regard. And finally, also giving regard to the demographic changes that are occurring. We're going to have a lot of young people in the next 10 to 20 years that will use these parks in teenage years. Things like, how there's walls built on certain parks and how they engage in recreational activities, because we're simply not going to have enough sporting grounds to deliver for them, also is key in the context of this policy. So really exciting stuff, very thorough and good from an asset management perspective. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. I think this is a very opportune time because I have an article here which was put out by the ABC Living on the Fringe. And they've got a photograph here of 1 million houses put into one little square here, if anyone wants to see it. And with Australians moving away from the inner city and into more affordable areas on the fringes, many people are missing out on the joy of community, experts say. Large housing estates, which have been around since the end of World War II, offer a popular alternative to those who see inner city living as a perpetual pipe dream. And it goes on to say, and just plonking green spaces into suburbs such as wetlands and parks isn't the solution. He adds, it can be wonderful third place as long as it's safe and is attractive, it's shaded and within easy access of all people's houses. If not properly planned, women and older people often feel uncomfortable, and that is correct because many of us like to walk down the Werribee River, and at the moment none of us are going. So I think the council officers have done a great job with this, but I do have problems with the word embellishment. I keep seeing a dress pop up or a birthday cake pop up because that's the words we use for embellishment, and I can't get my head around this embellishment. I'm sorry if you wrote it, Stephen, but I can't. But what I would like to see is placemaking. We went to a workshop many years ago in Melbourne, and I have got a fantastic book, what they did in Chicago, and they brought all the youth in to help design and do the park, because if you do that, the kids will look after it. And I think, although this is, you know...
One more minute, Councillor Marcus.
I really think we need to bring in our youth to make sure that they had... The other thing that I am a little disappointed in, because I did send this in, there is some magic parks around Maribyrnong and that, but I don't see that we've put any of their special equipment in there, and I think that's what we need to get the people into the parks. I just don't want to see... I would like to see exotic trees. I'd like to see some gardens for the older people to go out and enjoy it. So, but well done to everybody, and I'm sorry that I don't like the word embellishment. Perhaps we should use beautify. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now move this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 4.8, the Green Living Series report. The report is on pages 103 to 112. The recommendation is on page 104, and the pages are on 113 to 117. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Khan, do I have a seconder? Councillor Barlow. Thank you. Councillor Khan, would you like to speak to this item? Thank you, Councillor Khan. Do I have any other speakers for this item? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. I'm really pleased again because this fits into the environment portfolio, and I think the council officers have done the fabulous job this year increasing of the number of events that have been held in the city. This provides a platform to promote and support local environmental leaders and community groups, and to provide networking opportunities for like-minded people. And I think this has worked extremely well. I've been to some of these groups to see it, and it's been good to think that people come in and they want to talk about the environment, because if we don't look after it, we're not going to have a wonderful place to live. Not only has the Green Living Series seen a huge increase in events and attendees each year, but an exciting trend in 2019 was the increase in partnership opportunities with our local community groups. Of the 64 events held this year, 13 of those were community-led, and that's what we've tried to do over the last 2 years, is get them to lead, highlighting the fantastic leadership we have within Wyndham community. And some of those, if I can get through them quick enough, Love Our Street 3030, Lisa does a fabulous job, and Mia and I were out with the Werribee River Association cleaning up the other day. Transition of Wyndham, the Werribee River Association, the Werribee Park Heritage Orchard, Beach Patrol 3030, the Iramu Community Centre, the Shoestring Gardening, the Koala Clancy Foundation, and the Mount Rothwell Biodiversity Interpretation Centre. In 2019, when the series was launched on February the 1st with a family trivia night, and which was very good, and saw the residents test their knowledge on the environmental issues in a family-friendly social setting. This year's series focused on gardening, children's activities, sustainable homes, wildlife, nature and waste management, which is important to everyone. With over 4,100 participants in 2019, it is safe to say that the Green Living Series was an outstanding success, and next year we will be looking at 8,000 people coming together, because we are determined that we will make this a very clean, beautiful, green city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillors, I now put it to a vote. All those in favour? You got to be quick, Tony. I didn't see your hand. Okay, thank you,
Look,
Councillor
I was just going to
Hooper.
do a bit of a plug for this one. On the 28th of July, on the Sunday, Wyndham City Council officers are going to be handing over 500 free trees to the community. So that's coming up very soon. Jump on the website and there's the details there. But look, free trees helping green our streets, I think, is an important thing to do. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. You need to get your hand up quickly. So I now move this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 4.9, the Changzhou Sister City Friendship Agreement China Report. The report is on pages 118 to 131. The recommendation is on pages 118. Councillors, do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Walter Villagonzalo. Do I have a... Councillor Barlow, you want to speak to the vote? And you've got 5 minutes.
I think I better, because it's a great story. I'm actually going to quote the page numbers if anybody wants to follow it. Madam Mayor, Kate Roffey and I, on behalf of the City of Wyndham and councillors, visited Changzhou in China. And when you look at page 119, halfway down the page, it says that there were several cities in China that were interested in becoming having an interest with us, whether as a sister city friendship or whatever you want to call it. The city that we chose to go to after nearly 2 years of working on this, so this is not a flash in the pan, this took 2 years working on this, it's in the Chengdu province. We went from Shanghai to Changzhou, which is about 300 kilometres away, in 45 minutes. And, you know, it's interesting where the next paragraph down here, it says Changzhou, like Wyndham, is undergoing rapid transformation from a traditional focus on farming and manufacturing to a modern economy. Well, let me tell you, we're probably 20, 30 years away from getting a fast train that'll go 300 kilometres in 45 minutes. So there's a lot of learnings. And in fact, one of the reasons I'm quite happy that Changzhou has agreed to be a sister city with the City of Wyndham is because they, like us, have been trying very hard and are succeeding in, like what we're trying to do, is not only talk the talk, but we want to walk it. And that's what we're doing. We're walking the talk about us becoming a sister city. We spoke previously about the hubs. I think this is great for new businesses, new innovation, not propping up businesses that may be doomed to failure. And we've got here quite clearly, and it says that they've gone from a farming, traditional manufacturing type economy to fast tracking to what we saw there when we went on our trip. It's a major business city in China, in the top 10, with 42 of the Fortune 500 corporations. That alone speaks volumes for itself. Now, are businesses in Wyndham interested in China? Most certainly. Turn to page 120. Have a look at the photo of some small businesses that were actually in Shanghai when we arrived, who were looking at business opportunities with Veki. And they will not be the last that will want to go there. They will not be the last that will want to talk to businesses from our new sister city. And if you look on page 121, you'll see the mayor with the mayor of Changzhou, Mr. Ding Chen, actually looking at a map of the city. And on the following page, you'll see the strict formality that the Chinese government provide, and it's and there's a very luxurious chair you happen to be sitting in, Madam Mayor. I can remember in my trips to China and Japan, you're sitting similar types of chairs. But and when you look on page 121, have a look at the people that came to meet us. We've got the Vice Mayor, which is the Deputy Mayor, the Secretary General of the Municipal People's Government, the Vice Secretary General. It's like a who's who of people who are helping Changzhou go into head towards the 22nd century, not the 21st century, but into the 22nd century. Then we
1
go
minute,
over to
Councillor
page-
Barlow.
Be right, thank you. Then we have a look at page 125. No matter where we went, there was a great number of people that came along with us, providing support and advice and information about a whole range of issues. I'm going to jump ahead very quickly to page 128. Now, I was blown away by this development. 5 major university-type buildings. It's got here international cooperation with more than 40 colleges and universities in the United States, Canada, UK and Hong Kong. And when we walk through to see what students are studying in that, it just blew me away. CSIRO would give their back teeth to get back some of the money that was taken off them over the last few years to actually work on some of these projects. It's just, and you've got students who are 16, 17, 18, 19 years old working on these types of projects. And so I think we've got a lot to learn from this city.
Need to start winding up, Councillor Barlow.
And I will wrap up in about 5 seconds. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I actually, I was very pleased to go along in my role as cultural diversity portfolio holder, and I look forward to the future relationships that we have with this city, because to be honest, they've got far, far more to offer us than I think we've got to offer them. And we should take every opportunity in actually making sure that we do that.
Thank you, yes. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Agree, well said. And it was a great trip, very worthwhile.
No. 4.5 million people, and every motorbike was electric.
Yes.
I nearly got run over 5 times, I think, because I couldn't hear them coming.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Yeah. It was well said. Thank you. Any other speakers on this item? Councillor Hooper.
Yep. Look, I'm just going to be quick, like every other thing I've been talking about. This is absolutely a great step for our city, and I know in the past people have seen these sister city relationships and they can say, what does it mean? Is it just something on paper? But this actually has meaning when it comes to dealing with the Chinese government. It has meaning when dealing with this province, but I do think we need to make sure that we invest in it so that the community of Wyndham does get the return. There'd be no point signing this agreement and then having it forgotten in a drawer. We really do need to make sure that the resources go into this so that the businesses of Wyndham can access this new market and capitalise on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Any other speakers on this item? Councillor Khan.
Mayor, look, I think it's a great step yourself and Councillor Henry Barlow and Director of the Deals and Investment and Major the Kate Rafi have gone and signed this agreement, which is great. And we hear the stories, as Henry have said, that, these electric bikes and there's no noise and they don't work on petrol or diesel, they're just all electric. So this is a great story to hear it. I think we really need to see that, what we do from onwards. I think if we go on the pages, it talks about in there what can be done with it. We spend it, if I'm not wrong, more than or in proximity of $50,000+ on this trip, which is not much, but it's important how we can utilize and moving forward. I'm a bit of concerned and disappointed when this trip went. I think we have underutilized our one of the fellow councillor Anne, which might can add a value to it when we're going to understanding Chinese culture. Because I can tell you, Madam Mayor, no one knows better than Indian culture than I do, because I was born in India. I can understand them more. So I think we have missed out the opportunity. If next time council will go China, and if there's any member or representative of the community, I think we should take advantage of it. And it's kind of part of a deal is already here. So that's sort of things I would say, and I think the Chinese culture is very unique. We know that how important it is for culturally sensitive emotionally, and I think Councillor Ahn can add a value to it. So if there's a near future, anything happening, I would say that, Councillor Ahn should put up a hand and work with it. I love to see that now there's a more opportunity, just not with the Ganju or China itself. There were other countries we can explore. As Tony Hooper has said, that now the Wyndham have been changed, and I think we got to now explore that. And it's a great thing what Henry and yourself gone out. I think the more opportunity to explore maybe India, Philippines, and some other countries, because we got people and similarities here. So I think this is a document, good setup, and I think we will follow that and look forward to see that if that relationship can increase more. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. And just to be clear, the trip to Changzhou costs nowhere in the vicinity of $50,000. In fact, our expenses will be declared next month, which will make it clear in terms of how much this actual trip cost. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Thank you, councillors. I now put this item to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Oh, you could have. Oh, you could have actually. No one talked against it. Item 4.10, Wyndham RDF Strategic Plan 2019 to 2025. The report is on pages 132 to 137. The recommendation is on page 132. The attachments are printed in a separate document on pages 292 to 310. Councillors, do I have a move of this item? Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Councillor Maynard, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will on this occasion. And quite readily admit to talking rubbish, but hoping that I don't waste anyone's time.
What a waste of time.
Because it's something that a number of us are very passionate about, and I am the Wyndham RDF and the related waste and recycling issues. Having been on the on the community reference group as a councillor representative, and we do have two others, Councillor Hooper and Villa Gonzalo, but having been on myself for the last two council terms, I certainly feel particularly proud tonight to speak in favour of endorsing the new strategic plan. The proposed Wyndham RDF strategic plan will enable council to continue to put in place cutting-edge practices to ensure that it leads the field in waste management. This new plan transparently lays out the steps to prepare before any decision-making processes could even proceed to consider whether we should pursue energy from waste at the RDF. The benefit of the waste tour in 2018 for me personally was that there are several safeguards, including environmental standards, that most certainly would need that would have to be met and are being met in these facilities across Europe, Madam Mayor, before we would pursue this option here. Whether we like it or not, there are some types of waste that just cannot be recycled. And the current strategy of stockpiling or landfilling, these are clearly not working. So we have to be able to investigate our options. And I think we did that, Madam Mayor, when we endorsed just recently our recycling contract to go to Visy. I think it was a very, very good move. I also note that the state government has several reviews of this option currently underway, and most certainly I wait with bated breath on the potential outcomes of those reviews. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillors, do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Ahn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to be supporting the motion to endorse this Wyndham RDF strategic plan. It makes sense for us to recover more value from waste and over time to landfill less waste. I would like to note that, as Councillor Peter Maynard mentioned, that the current problems in the recycling sector does not sit with one level of government. So the type of partnerships and collaboration that are mentioned in the strategic plan will be quite important. And that council will need to regard this RDF probably as a business that delivers economic as well as environmental outcomes. And I believe there will be strong community support for the actions throughout this strategic plan to help us to achieve these goals. And I'm looking forward to seeing we are making further progress based on this strategic plan. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ahn. Do I have any other speakers on this item? Councillor Barlow.
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I'm fully supportive of all of this. I think it's good to have a plan. You need to know where you want to go, and then you can actually work towards it. So it's good to have a plan. When I was in the UK recently, I stayed with some relatives, and they had 4 bins. I couldn't believe it. They've got, I don't know whether you know a lot of households. People talk about medium density housing here. The great majority of property that I stayed at was all medium density housing. There's not a lot of room in their front yards, and some of them have got no front yards whatsoever, and some have got very small backyards. But every household had 4 bins. So you had your general waste that you just can't do anything with it. You had your green waste, which was grass cuttings, twigs, branches, clippings off the roses or whatever. Then the third one was plastics and paper. And the fourth one was actually like food scraps and stuff like that that can actually go towards mulch. So they actually had 4 bins that actually seem to do a fair bit, but I'd hate to be wheeling them all out every week, but but they've definitely looking at doing that. And I asked them if how long this had been going on for, and they said it's only probably been in the last few years that they've actually gone to that level. So I'm interested in when you look at recovery, resource recovery, and residual waste and curbside collections of food stuff and garden organics and things like that, just how we can actually do things better. And I think it's good that we've got a plan that we can work to.
Agreed. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Do any other speakers on this item? Councillor Gilligan.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. This strategic plan is massive, and we should be in no doubt of just how massive this will be. Some of the game-changing decisions that this plan puts forward include the changes to the way that we make budget decisions as a council. I've been pretty vocal both publicly and privately about the need to no longer siphon off the profits of the RDF to pump up or prop up council spending. And that will end subject to the endorsement of this plan, and we'll see significant investment that will be available to be redistributed back into the RDF and deliver not just environmental outcomes, but very good dividends over time as we invest in specific projects in that site that would have otherwise largely gone to the Capital Works program, for example. We can instead have a debate around making sure that infrastructure is funded at its fair share by all 3 tiers of government. And it is important, in my view, on a 101 business prospect that we shouldn't be siphoning profits from a business unit of this nature and maximising the asset so far as we can. The report also outlines, as a result of that, looking at what I would class to be a structural separation of the RDF so far as it would exist within a policy construct. And that will lead to being able to, in my mind, make better decisions around the site, including the types of investment opportunities that exist in the site. And Councillor Maynard has outlined some of those opportunities in terms of potential waste to energy and the alternate technologies that exist in the site. But it is important to recognise that this will be a shift in terms of resource and allocation that is currently burdened directly on council administration that will otherwise change under a proposed new governance structure. A really important consideration in the context of why I make the point that this is quite a massive plan
One more minute,
that we're
Councillor.
endorsing. And finally, considering the context of this asset, it is publicly owned and it is publicly operated. And we've got intense pressures from the private sector that ultimately means that we do have to step up our game just as much as the state and federal tiers do. And we're doing that, and we're certainly delivering on our obligations on a local government level. And now the expectation will fall on the state to continue to work with us, particularly in this waste crisis, not just on a recycling construct, but also other opportunities in terms of waste management, making sure that money is redistributed back to the community and not necessarily gobbled up in the private sector for profit in these companies. And I think that is the important direction that we stand to go on in the next 6 years. And I wholeheartedly endorse this plan, and I congratulate council officers on the very thorough work that has been done here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. Do we have any other speakers for this item? Councillors, I now move this motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Motion is carried. Item 5, confidential business. Councillors, can I have a mover to suspend standing orders? Thank you, Councillor Maynard, for confidential business.
Madam Mayor, I move that pursuant to section 89(2) of the Local Government Act, standing orders be suspended at this meeting of council to close to members of the public in order for council to discuss confidential business.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Khan. I now put this motion to a...
Thank God for Councillor Maynard in being able to quote these on a regular basis. That's my contribution to the debate, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you. Thank you, Councillor Gilligan. The councillors, I do now put this motion to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried, and I will ask the public to leave the room. The doors will be...